The topic of the King's move is one that can be controversial, that's for sure. And I want to take a look at this clip from the Fix podcast with Neil Pickup. Now, they're talking about matches. They're basically having a disagreement, Neil and Luke, about match format, whether it's best of 5 or best of 7. And Neil is saying he prefers longer matches with more matches, more options for the arm wrestler to show different technical ability and adjustments and endurance. And Luke is saying that he prefers best of 5. So let's take a look at this and then talk about the King's move.
A lot of what we saw, if you knew what you were watching, in Giannis versus Mindaugas. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not traditionally what we've seen in best of 7 arm wrestling. We see it more of just an event of attrition, and you eventually just wear your opponent's pronator out so much or their hand out so much or whatever that now you can finally win because you weren't strong enough to win the first 3 rounds. And that's where I get I don't know how.
You don't like it when it's endurance element,
or not when the entire match comes down to just endurance, and so if you look at Devin,
I think even a best of 7, you can't say that the entire match would come down just to endurance, because if someone is too strong, then they're able to win the first 4, then endurance doesn't even become a factor. I think endurance only becomes a factor when it's close in strength, and then you're able to see who makes a better adjustment to get better positions, which might bleed out the opponent faster than you, which would be considered endurance. So
it is absolutely an endurance arm wrestler, but Devin tries different techniques, different directions. So he's arm wrestling during that as well.
Yep.
And then if you look at Bob Brown, and I'll pick on Bob because Bob's my best mate in the sport, and we talk about this all the time, and he knows this. Bob is purely the endurance arm wrestler. He is going to stop you. When he stops, he's an outstanding arm wrestler. You've got to be able to out-arm wrestle him. Mm-hmm. But...
And this comes into the topic of the King's move because, of course, Bob Brown, someone with a really strong King's move. But I think about the King's move, it's not an unbeatable move by any means. And I think people are starting to figure it out more and more. As you would see in this podcast clip, they're talking about Michael Todd and how his technique has been figured out now more so than before as far as what to do against the King's move. Like in this practice pull, it's just a practice pull footage, but he's trying to set his open top roll into my hand. Now, the thing about cupping is if you have enough cupping, you can kind of negate someone's pronation or ability to even get into a King's move. So that's something that helps, but also rising and climbing. So I do some cupping. Here I'm giving my wrist, but I'm also kind of rising the whole time. And that's a key component of facing a King's move, is being able to rise and get a good hand position, to not trying to go harder right into it sometimes, because then you'll lose your wrist and that will play right into their technique, but being patient and being able to climb and make adjustments, get your shoulder behind it, climb, and then you're able to apply more side pressure once you get them pretty stretched out in the King's move. But also just having the cupping. Like, cupping is really important to not allowing someone to do what they want in the King's move. If your cupping is weak, then somebody with a really good King's move can take your wrist easier. So that's the thing. Now let's go back into this clip here.
He's eventually going to fatigue your hand to a point that he can take your hand and transition to a press to get you beat.
He's talking about Bob Brown.
If he can't stop that match and fatigue you out, he doesn't win that match. Period. There's no technique that he's going to implore that changes that if he can't get you to fatigue, unless he's just simply stronger than you.
So what about this then? You think it potentially, the longer format, therefore, you could argue that it encourages evolution of technique. So people need to get more technical, more technically well-rounded. Because my theory on a lot of this is that the use of PEDs in the sport and so on has encouraged less technique, more massive power. So there's a lot more Goran Ivanisevic than there is Andre Agassi. You know what I'm saying?
So I'd agree with that.
Grass.
And I think it has caused evolution in the sport. I think that's why you see Michael Todd lose more often.
Controversial shit
Yep.
right there.
I mean, if you think about it, before social media and stuff like that, the King's move was more obscure, more random. Nowadays, everybody and their brother is doing a King's move on an arm wrestling table. At least in North America, I would
guys
say.
have figured out how to beat Michael's ace move.
So it's an interesting discussion, but I'll put the link in the description. Basically, they're going back and forth on, what's better, best of 5 or best of 7. Me personally, in general, I like, endurance-based pulling. I like trying to figure out the best technique to gas out the opponent and make them pin themselves and just get an ultimate good hand position to where the match is just completely won at that point. That's why I love making those technical adjustments. And let's take a look at, this was a screenshot from the MAC event yesterday of Milo Larrett's match, and it's a double King's move. Wasn't the only double King's move, but this topic of the King's move obviously always has some interesting discord regarding it. Apparently, Ian Carnegie said it was impossible to have a double King's move on his tables. Had a few of those yesterday, and I'm not even necessarily against it. I mean, it's, people think it's ugly, but there is technique. There are adjustments going on the whole time. And if you're an arm wrestler, you would know that there's a lot of mini adjustments going on. Let's review this comment right here. The MAC table is more conducive to double King's move. We had a couple center of the table pins called last night, which I don't agree with. MAC does some things right. I like the setup elbow pads that are designed to cause fouls, like on standard tables, is better. Though I think Macs are far from perfect. The biggest gripe about last night was the running foul rules. I thought Mac was supposed to have running fouls, but I kept seeing every match being stopped on fouls, not even big fouls. The biggest problem with running fouls is that it often penalizes arm wrestlers for micro fouls than it does for major fouls. So you commit a micro foul and you have to get the pin just to get a restart. You commit a major foul and you get an automatic restart. Arm Wars does this and it makes no sense. All normal fouls should be runners, and major fouls where someone is not coming back on the pad or lifts so high as to cause danger to the opponent should be losses. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, like if someone's in a losing position and you see them just intentionally raising their elbow and they're getting a restart, like that's depends on the organization, but some people will say that's a loss. It should be a loss, and others want to see, for more entertainment, you get more restarts if they restart that match, even though the guy knows he was going to lose if he didn't raise his elbow like that. So it's obviously a professional foul. But let me know your thoughts on the King's move. Are you a fan of the King's move or not? Let me know in the comments section, and I'll catch you guys later.